just the start.
Hey y'all, thanks for stopping by the obviously Lee Authentic channel. My name's Leah, that's spelled L-E-A and not L-E-A-H. So we are going to be talking about the last episode of this season of Married to Medicine. This is the third part of the reunion and the final nail in the coffin on this season. So I just want to start off by saying thank you so much to all the new subscribers that I've acquired from reviewing the show. This is the second show that I have completed on this channel. The first one was Real Housewives of New Jersey. But yeah, I appreciate all the new people that have come based off of this show. And thanks for rocking with me. So we are going to do this like by screenshots because I just watched it and I took screenshots of things that I thought was the most important. So it starts off where it left off with Scott doing a horrible job trying to explain himself about the whole, is his life coach a woman or a man? Does he really have a life coach? And honestly, y'all, it's bullshit. It really is. The man just lying. He's just lying. And it sucks because it's like, nobody wants to see a marriage break up, but no one wants to see a woman or a man in a marriage that is not feeding them. And I liked how, how Toya said, you know, their pastor told us people try to stay in marriages, but they don't understand that the damage that they're doing by staying in an unhealthy marriage it's damaging their kids. And I'm glad somebody said it, because there's no reason for them to be in a marriage if they're not happy, because you're just breeding trauma and like dysfunction to your 3 kids, and that's not fair to them. So Andy was so confused and was like, this story not making sense. He kept looking at Curtis. He kept looking at Cecil, because them two said like, oh, he gonna be making sense. And it wasn't making sense. Honestly, what it boils down to is Scott was being petty and immature and said it just to get back at Contessa, because he was tired of her asking him constantly about whether or not he had a life coach, and he was just being a dick about it. Then we have the couples come out. It's the ladies and their husbands, and then, you know, Quiet by herself, and so is Heavenly by herself. And so, you know, they're talking. They bring up about what it felt like being at the march in Washington, D.C., and how it felt so good to be a part of history and seeing all the young people, and it just made them feel great to do a mission trip on American soil where they're from. Then we got into Eugene. Eugene made me cry a little bit, y'all. I teared up because, excuse me, y'all, all the stuff that like the doctors, the nurses, the custodial staffs, like everybody who was working in a hospital, even administration, even the food workers, like they went through a lot. They went to work every day having the anxiety of whether or not they were going to get the virus and die. And that's something crazy. Like, it was crazy to hear his story when he was talking about how, you know, he was scared. He was like, it feels like when all the doctors say we all went through stuff, like all lives matters, because it was a different experience for the nurses and the workers and the doctors who were in the ICU and in the ER. So ER, we all know, is like emergency medicine, and the ICU is the intensive care unit. So basically you're dealing with people who are like at death's door, or really like in a really like their body is in an unstable state. And basically when Eugene told that story about how he had on his PPE, which is his protection gear, and they were trying to intubate a lady. And if you don't know what intubation is, it's basically putting the breathing tube down your throat so that your chest can like, is it aspirate or inspirate? No, I think it's, my bad, y'all. I'm getting them. Basically, so it help pump your chest so that you can breathe. And once it goes that route, normally if someone has the virus, it's very likely that they are going to succumb to the illness, but there are cases of people coming back. And basically Eugene was talking about how like his PPE was falling off because he actually jumped on the bed to put the tube down this lady's throat, and unfortunately the next day she died. And you saw Eugene kind of tear up, and I was like, dang, like that. A lot of the doctors and nurses, and like I said, all the administration staff, custodial staffs, and the workers at the hospital during the huge height of the virus really need to be in therapy, because they probably saw some really messed up things. Like, one of my friends is a doctor, and she was working in the intensive care unit during this, and she was like, it was a lot. It was a lot. They were doing a lot of I forgot the name she told me, but it's called like preparations of care, where it's basically explaining to the family where this is all we can do medically possible. So all we can do is make that person comfortable until they transition to the afterlife. And she told me she never had to do that many since she was working as a doctor until all of this hit. And I was like, that is crazy. But yeah, like a lot of them, even Jackie was saying how like it was hard for them to like help women give birth and then immediately have to take their kids away or the baby away to make sure that the baby didn't have COVID, that the mom was okay. And it was just like a lot of people went through a lot. Like, this was hard for everyone. Probably harder for the other, like the ER doctors and the intensive care like doctors and nurses, but it was a lot. And it also, I think it helped shed light on what Toya was going through, because Toya and Eugene are best friends. Like, Toya and Eugene, like, I know they gossip about the ladies together, but they are really friends. And when Toya was just, like, when Eugene was talking, you could see, like, Toya's face was just upset, because he was saying, like, he wasn't really there for his family because he was scared of getting them sick. And then he was just like, she was like, he doesn't really share what's going on. And then when he did, it was a lot. So I was just like, wow, like, a lot of people's families were affected. Then we have, we talked about the march. Oh, Cecil and Simone. Someone asked, like, what was it about Cecil that made Simone get with him with his broken down car? And she was like, his legs. And I giggled. Then my homie Karen was asked, like, how did he feel about Anila talking about his downstairs area? And he just said, I rolled my eyes. She do a lot. And I was like, she was like, I'm like my mother. And Karen said, not too much. I said, oh, he really don't like her mama. And then we got into Eugene versus Quad. So we all know Eugene ain't feeling Quad. Eugene is not feeling Quad. And Eugene is not pressed by Quad. And he showed that. Because basically they were talking about how, and Curtis chimed in. He was like, why is it okay for the women to address the men, but it's not okay for the men to address the women? He was like, things have changed. Women are more empowered and things of that nature. But if you're going to be that aggressive, then we should be able to communicate. And then he was being sexist, and it wasn't really it didn't sound good. So Eugene was like, tag me in. So Eugene basically said, like, a lot of the digs that have been thrown at him and Toya have been couple based. So he was like, I should be able to respond if it's couple based. So then Heavenly chimed in and basically said that Eugene was mad about the comment that Heavenly made about their finances, and he went to Damon and spoke to Damon, and Damon basically got in Heavenly's behind about what she said, and she apologized to Toya. Leah not doing that. If you talking ish about me, I'm coming to you. I don't care, male, female, and all the genders in between. If you gonna be disrespectful, I'm gonna be disrespectful back. So I don't the whole thing about like, well, men shouldn't get in women's business, then don't talk about him like that. Excuse me. And vice versa. When women, they be like, women should be in men's business, then don't talk about me. If you don't want a response. That's simple. Don't talk about me if you don't want a response. So I agreed with Quad when she said that, when she was like, everybody can get it. But what was funny is they pulled up a tweet that Eugene said about like towards Quad and Heavenly, where he was like, as far as beg, never done that. Borrow, it's called a mortgage, and it's what grown folks do when they buy a house. Too bad some could never get past underwriting. Still, if you have proof, call the law. So Eugene basically said, girl, I ain't done none of that, but I'm with the smoke if you with the smoke. So then the part that got me is when Quad was like, do you want me to buy you a skirt? Like, you need to put on a skirt or something pertaining to a skirt, trying to emasculate him and emasculate him. And Eugene said, girl, make sure it's expensive, because what's up? I said, said, okay, Eugene. Eugene said, girl, I ain't afraid of you. And if you want it, you can come get it because I'm going to give it to you. I said, okay, Eugene. Okay. So then we got into it with like Scott and Contessa, where Andy asked Simone and Jackie, what was your reasoning for bringing like Scott down to the women's trip? And they basically were like, the women helped us stay together and got us like everybody helped us stay together, so we thought we could help too. And I liked how Simone was basically like, you gotta love her and you have to want to work this out. So counseling, you going to counseling, she going to counseling, and maybe y'all can go together, but you have to go to counseling. And I hope they beat that into that man's head, because I don't think Scott wants a divorce. But if he doesn't, I don't think maybe he do, and maybe he just doesn't want to admit it. But it's like, y'all marriage is not in a good spot. We end up finding out, like, again, like Contessa was like, he got till her birthday. If things haven't changed by 2022, it would be 2022, they done. So I'm kind of like, do you want things to get better? Like, bro, figure it out. And it just was sad. So then they asked Karen, because Karen is supposed to be like the neutral party. And Karen, it was crazy because I actually was agreeing with Curtis. Ugh. And Curtis and Karen basically said the same thing, just in different ways. Curtis said there's no clarity. He's like, Contessa don't want to answer questions. And then when Scott answered questions, it's like, it's not the full truth. And then Karen said, it's just like, it's too much. He was like, y'all have rumors around because no one's answering the questions. And like, no, there's no clarity. And it's true. Like, they're not on the same page. Like, she in Mexico and he in Canada. Like, they're nowhere near each other and they can't get it together. And so they even bring about the picture with the esthetician. So basically it wasn't a naked picture. It was a side-by-side comparison picture where Scott had, his face. He had the before and then the after. And the lady was doing his face, and he basically did a promotion for her. And Heavenly even DM'd him and was like, this don't look right, so you need to take this down. And he actually took it down because I guess he realized it didn't look right. But I'm like, you can't keep doing this tit for tat mess and then expect your relationship to be good and that y'all aren't like, and expect y'all not to be in a messed up place. Like, you're playing games with your marriage, but then you don't like the outcome of it. And that makes you look stupid, Scott. Because it's like, you want things to work, but you're not willing to put in the work. And with Contessa, it's like, you can't keep burying your head in the sand. Maybe you do need to leave. Maybe you need to take all 3 of your kids, buy you a nice little small, like, 4-bedroom house, and you live there while Scott lives in that big house by himself, and realize, like, if I don't make a change, then I don't have my family, or I don't have the unit that I want. So then, we bring up about what I'm glad someone said it, but I'm glad they said Heavenly is a habitual line stepper. Like, she crosses the line all the time. And I'm glad Contessa said, I've told you that, because you do. And Heavenly didn't even apologize, but they basically brung up about how Heavenly said that someone asked the question, like, how does Heavenly feel about Quad buying that huge home when Heavenly, like, said that, she don't have no man, she don't have no kids to love her. And Heavenly was like, I didn't say that. And then they showed it where she was in the car with Funky Dineva, and she did. And Funky Dineva was like, don't say that. And like, Quad was looking like, I didn't hear her say that. And she didn't say that. And then when they played it, and then Toya's like, yes, she did. Yes, she did. And her eyes are like, what? And so basically she like halfway apologized, and I was like, this is my thing. Quad still has an issue with Toya saying that like it was her small ass apartment, but I'm like, someone disrespecting your apartment versus saying that like you basically don't have nobody in your life that loves you. You gonna forgive Heavenly, but you're not gonna forgive Toya. Like, you're still gonna have a grudge and a beef with Toya when Heavenly basically was like, you're unlovable. Like, that to me would be worse than someone saying my townhouse was a small ass apartment. Like, that's stupid to me. And I don't understand like why you have a grudge with Toya, but you can openly forgive Heavenly. Unless that means you just don't take Heavenly serious. it's like serious and you think everything she does is a joke and she's a joke, because you being mad at Simone that one season was like stupid, because Simone really didn't even give you all of that of what Heavenly does, because Heavenly be dragging the women in her YouTube channel and they still cool with her. So it's weird. It's weird. Then they bring up the whole comment Anila made about like being able to be a dentist, and Heavenly basically was like she couldn't do it. Anila was like, if I wanted to I could, but basically Heavenly was like, girl, no you can't. Shh, hush up. So that was the end. It was really like I think that all three parts were actually very entertaining. That's one thing about Married to Medicine. Like, people say Married to Medicine is boring, but Married to Medicine knows how to keep people enthralled with their stories because they're real. And on top of that, they bring it every reunion. Every reunion is spicy. So yeah. So I'm done. That is it. That is all. Again, thank you for all the people who subscribe based off of these videos. And I hope you stay. Even if you're watching this and you don't subscribe, thank you for watching. And remember to be bravely authentic. Drop down in the comments below and let me know what's up. Deuces.